Psalm 91 is a treasure trove of divine promises, and as we continue to reflect on its depth, it becomes a source of peace, courage, and confidence. Every word of this psalm is a declaration of God's sovereign protection and His loving care for those who seek refuge in Him. Each verse unfolds a new layer of God's faithfulness and desire to protect His children from harm. The psalm begins with an invitation to live in the constant presence of God. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. This speaks to more than a one-time act of seeking God. It's about making God our permanent dwelling place. To dwell in His shelter means to choose, daily, to live in His presence, to trust in Him with every detail of our lives. God's shelter is not temporary. It is a lifelong invitation to abide in Him. No matter where you are or what circumstances you face, the invitation to dwell in His shelter remains open. The idea of abiding in the shadow of the Almighty is such a beautiful image of closeness. The Almighty casts a protective shadow over us, and as long as we remain in that shadow, no harm can touch us. A shadow is always close to the one who casts it, reminding us that God is near, covering us, and surrounding us with His power and love. This shadow represents His divine protection, and the closer we stay to Him, the more we are enveloped in His peace. Are you living in that shadow today? Is your heart resting in the assurance that God's presence surrounds you like a protective canopy? I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. This declaration of trust is personal. It's not enough to know intellectually that God is a refuge. We must claim Him as our refuge. When we say, my refuge and my fortress, we are making a bold statement of faith, saying that God alone is our place of safety and strength. A fortress is impenetrable, built to withstand any attack. God's protection is like that, strong, reliable, and unwavering. When the storms of life rage around us, He is the fortress that keeps us safe within its walls. He is the one in whom we trust, not ourselves, not our circumstances, but God alone. For He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. This verse speaks of God's deliverance from the traps of the enemy and from unexpected dangers. The snare of the fowler represents the traps that are set to catch us unawares, the deceptions, temptations, and schemes of the enemy. Yet, God promises to deliver us from these traps, often before we even know they are there. The deadly pestilence can be understood as any calamity that threatens our well-being, whether it's sickness, disaster, or fear. But no pestilence is too great for God to overcome. His deliverance is sure, and His protection is over every area of our lives. He will cover you with His pinions, and under His wings, you will find refuge. God's care is described here in the most tender terms, like a mother bird covering her young with her wings. It's a picture of safety and nurture. Just as a bird protects her chicks from predators by hiding them under her wings, so too does God cover us with His love and protection. His wings are a place of refuge, a place where no enemy can reach us. We are hidden in His embrace, safe from harm. Whenever you feel exposed or vulnerable, remember that God's wings are spread over you, shielding you from every danger. The next phrase, His faithfulness is a shield and buckler, points to the reliability of God's protection. A shield protects us from attacks, and a buckler is a smaller shield that offers close personal defense. God's faithfulness is both a large, overarching protection that covers us completely and a personal shield that protects us intimately. His faithfulness is not dependent on our circumstances or our performance. It is rooted in His unchanging character. When you feel attacked or vulnerable, remember that God's faithfulness is your shield, surrounds you, protecting you from every assault. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day. This verse reassures us that no matter what time of day, God's protection is constant. The terror of the night often represents the fears and anxieties that creep in when we are most vulnerable. The darkness can symbolize uncertainty and the unknown. Yet, God tells us that we need not fear what comes in the night. He is with us in the darkness, and His light dispels all fear. The arrow that flies by day is the visible threat, the attacks that come when we least expect them. But even in the light of day, God's protection remains steadfast. Whether by night or by day, we are safe in His hands. Nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. Here, the psalmist continues to expand on God's protection against every form of danger. Whether it is the hidden threat that comes unseen, like pestilence, or the overt destruction that wastes at noonday, God's promise is that these dangers will not overcome us. We may face trials, but they will not destroy us. God's protection is not dependent on the nature of the threat, but on His unchanging power and faithfulness. When we place our trust in Him, even the most threatening circumstances cannot harm us. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. This verse speaks to the magnitude of God's protection. Even when destruction seems to be all around us, God keeps us safe. This doesn't mean we won't face challenges, but it assures us that even in the midst of widespread calamity, God's protection is personal and specific. We may see others around us fall, but God's hand remains over us. We are not subject to the same fate because we are under the covering of His wings. His protection is supernatural, beyond what we can see or understand. You will only look with your eyes and see the recompense of the wicked. This is a promise of God's justice. Though we may witness the consequences of evil, we are not partakers in it. God's justice will be done, and we will see His righteousness prevail. There are times when it seems like evil is winning, but Psalm 91 reminds us that God sees all and will act in His perfect timing. We don't need to take matters into our own hands. God's justice will be done. Our focus should remain on trusting Him and resting in His protection. Because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge, no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. These words reiterate the importance of making God our dwelling place. When we live in His presence, when we seek Him as our refuge, His protection is assured. No evil can touch us, and no plague can come near us. This is not a promise that we will never face difficulty, but a declaration that God's protection covers us in such a way that even when challenges come, they will not destroy us. His presence is a shield over our homes, our families, and our lives. For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. How incredible it is to know that God commands His angels to watch over us. Angels are ministering spirits, sent to protect and guide us on our journey. They guard us in all our ways, not just in moments of crisis, but in the ordinary, everyday moments of life. Wherever we go, whatever we do, God's angels are there, ensuring our safety. They are unseen, yet ever present, standing ready to intervene on our behalf. This should fill our hearts with peace, knowing that we are never alone. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. God's angels are not only present in times of great danger, but also in the small moments of life. They bear us up, ensuring that we don't stumble or fall. This speaks to God's care for even the smallest details of our lives. His protection is not just for the big moments, but for every step we take. Whether we face major challenges or minor inconveniences, God's angels are there to lift us up and protect us. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. Lions and serpents represent powerful and subtle dangers, yet God promises victory over them. In His strength, we will trample these enemies underfoot. This is a powerful image of authority and victory. God gives us the power to overcome every threat, no matter how fierce or cunning. Through His power, we can walk in victory, confident that no enemy can stand against us. Because He holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. This verse reveals the heart of God's protection, love and relationship. When we cling to God in love, when we know His name and trust in Him, He promises to deliver and protect us. God's protection is personal. It is rooted in the love He has for us and the love we have for Him. When we trust in His name, when we rely on His character, He responds with deliverance and protection. This is not just about avoiding harm, but about living in the fullness of God's love and care. When He calls to me, I will answer Him. I will be with Him in trouble. I will rescue Him and honor Him. What a beautiful promise. When we call to God, He not only hears but answers. He doesn't leave us to face our troubles alone. He is with us in the midst of them. His presence is our greatest comfort, and His promise is to rescue and honor us. God's response to our cries is not just to deliver us from trouble, but to lift us up and restore our honor. He is a God who answers, a God who is present in every trial, and a God who honors those who trust in Him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. The psalm concludes with a promise of long life and the revelation of God's salvation. This speaks to a life of fullness, purpose, and peace. God's salvation is not only for eternity but is experienced in our daily lives. His protection, provision, and presence satisfy us and give us the abundant life that He promises. Our lives are secure in Him, and His salvation is the ultimate expression of His love and care. Psalm 91 is an anthem of divine protection, a reminder that no matter what dangers we face, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, God is our refuge and fortress. His angels guard us, His wings cover us, and His faithfulness is our shield. In every season of life, we can trust that God is with us, delivering us from harm and leading us into His abundant life. As you reflect on this psalm, let it fill your heart with peace and confidence, knowing that the Almighty is your protector and that His promises are true. Amen. Let's continue our reflection on Psalm 91, a psalm that brings immense peace and assurance of God's protection. Each verse is a reminder that God's love for us is active and personal. His hand is always upon us, guiding, shielding, and delivering us from every danger. As we go deeper into its meaning, may the words of this psalm bring you closer to the heart of the one who holds your life in his hands. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. The secret place of the Most High is a place of intimacy with God, where we are covered, protected, and held close. It is a place we enter through prayer, trust, and surrender. When we dwell there, we are not just visitors but residents in his presence. To abide under his shadow is to live under his constant care, where no harm can reach us. It is a deep, ongoing relationship with God, where we live in the awareness that he is always near, always watching, always protecting. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God. In him will I trust. This is a declaration of faith, a bold statement that no matter what we face, God is our refuge. He is our fortress, a place of strength, security, and defense. When we say, "In him will I trust," we are choosing to place our faith in God over the fears and uncertainties of life. Trusting in God means believing that he is who he says he is, faithful, powerful, and loving. Even when the world around us feels unstable, God is our unshakable foundation. In him we find safety and peace. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. God's deliverance is sure. He promises to rescue us from the traps set by the enemy, whether they are physical dangers or spiritual attacks. The snare of the fowler speaks of hidden dangers that seek to ensnare us, but God sees what we cannot. He knows the plans the enemy has to harm us, and he promises to deliver us from them all. The noisome pestilence refers to deadly diseases and calamities, but even in the face of these threats, God is our protector. His deliverance is not limited to the physical realm. It extends to every part of our lives, body, mind, and spirit. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. The imagery of being covered with his feathers evokes a sense of tender care and protection. Just as a mother bird gathers her young under her wings to shield them from harm, so God covers us with his love and protection. Under his wings we find trust, a place of safety where fear cannot dwell. His truth, the eternal word of God, becomes our shield and defense. When the lies of the enemy come to attack our minds, when doubt and fear creep in, his truth stands as our shield, blocking every fiery dart of the enemy. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that fleeth by day. Fear is one of the most powerful tools the enemy uses to keep us from living fully in the freedom and peace of God. But in this psalm, we are reminded that fear has no place in the life of one who trusts in God. Whether it is the terror that comes in the night, those moments when anxiety and worry seem overwhelming, or the arrows that fly by day, attacks that are visible and direct, we are not to fear. God's protection covers us in both the darkness and the light. He is our shield, and his presence dispels every fear. Nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. The pestilence that walks in darkness speaks of unseen threats, those dangers that we cannot always see or understand, like diseases or disasters. But even in these moments of uncertainty, we are promised protection. The destruction that wastes at noonday represents visible dangers, those that we can see unfolding around us. But again, God's protection is over us. Whether the danger is visible or hidden, God's hand is upon us, guarding us from harm. His protection is complete, covering us from every form of evil. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. This verse paints a powerful image of God's protection. Even when destruction seems to be all around us, when thousands fall at our side, we are kept safe. The enemy's attacks may surround us, but they will not touch us. God's shield of protection stands between us and every form of danger. We may witness the effects of evil, but it will not come near us. This is the supernatural protection of God, a divine safeguard that ensures we are secure in His care. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. We are not participants in the destruction of the wicked, but witnesses. God promises that we will see justice served, but we will not experience the same fate as those who reject Him. His mercy shields us, even when we live in a world that is often filled with sin and evil. This is a reminder that God's justice will always prevail, and though the wicked may seem to prosper for a time, their end is assured. We can trust in the righteousness of God to uphold justice, while we remain under His protection. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. When we make the Lord our dwelling place, when we choose to live in His presence continually, we are promised that no evil will befall us. This doesn't mean we won't face challenges or difficulties, but it does mean that no harm will have the final say. God's protection is so complete that no plague, no disaster, no evil can penetrate His shield over our lives. Our homes, our families, and our lives are safe when we make God our habitation. For He shall give His angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. One of the most beautiful promises in this psalm is that God commands His angels to watch over us. These heavenly beings are assigned to guard us in all our ways, ensuring that we are protected from harm. Even when we are unaware of their presence, they are there, carrying out God's commands to keep us safe. What a comfort to know that the spiritual realm is working on our behalf, that God's angels are constantly watching over us, keeping us from dangers we cannot see. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. God's angels not only watch over us, they actively intervene to prevent harm. They bear us up in their hands, lifting us above the dangers that would cause us to stumble. This image of divine care is a reminder that God's protection is not passive. It is active and powerful. His angels are there, ensuring that even the smallest harm is kept from us. How many times have we been protected from stumbling, even when we didn't realize it? Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. This verse speaks of the victory we have over the enemy. The lion and the adder represent powerful and dangerous forces, yet we are promised that we will tread upon them. In God's strength, we trample the forces of evil underfoot. We are not victims of the enemy's attacks. We are victors through Christ. The lion may roar, and the serpent may strike, but they are powerless against the one who walks in the protection of God. We walk in victory, not because of our strength, but because of the power of the one who protects us. Because he hath set his love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. This is a personal promise from God to those who love Him. When we set our love upon God, when we choose to follow Him wholeheartedly, He promises to deliver us. He lifts us up above the trials and dangers of life, setting us on high where the enemy cannot reach. Knowing His name is more than just calling upon Him in times of trouble. It is living in a relationship with Him, understanding His character, His love, and His power. In response, God delivers us, placing us in a position of safety and victory. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. God assures us that when we call upon Him, He will answer. This is not a distant God who ignores our cries. He is near, attentive, and ready to respond. In our times of trouble, He promises not only to deliver us but to honor us. Our trials do not diminish us. They become opportunities for God to lift us up, to show His power and love in our lives. When we call, He answers, and His answer is always one of deliverance and honor. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. God's final promise is one of long life and eternal salvation. He promises to satisfy us with long life, not just in terms of years, but in terms of fullness and purpose. And beyond this life, He promises to show us His salvation. This is the ultimate gift, the promise of eternal life with God. In Him we are secure, not just for this life but for all eternity. His salvation is our greatest reward, and in His presence we find the fullness of joy and peace forever. Psalm 91 is a psalm of protection, but it is also a psalm of relationship. It calls us to trust in the God who loves us, who shelters us, and who delivers us from every danger. As we dwell in His presence, we are promised safety, peace, and victory over all that threatens to harm us. Let this psalm be a constant reminder that you are never alone. God's angels are watching over you. His truth is your shield, and His love is your refuge. Rest in the knowledge that He is with you always, protecting you, delivering you, and leading you into His salvation. Psalm 91 is a psalm of protection, comfort, and unwavering assurance, presenting God as the ultimate guardian of those who trust in Him. Each verse reveals a new dimension of His loving care, emphasizing His commitment to safeguard us from every harm. As we continue to explore this psalm, we find that it resonates deeply with our human need for security, especially in times of uncertainty. It speaks directly to our fears and anxieties, offering a divine promise that God is with us, fighting for us, and surrounding us with His powerful protection. The opening verses, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty," set the tone for the entire psalm. To dwell in God's shelter is to live in a state of constant communion with Him. It's not a temporary hiding place that we run to only in times of trouble, but a permanent place of residence. This shelter is a place of peace, security, and protection. It is under the shadow of the Almighty where we find rest from the storms of life. God invites us to remain close to Him, to live within His shadow, where His presence overshadows every fear and threat. Living in the shadow of the Almighty is an invitation to trust deeply in God's omnipotence. The word Almighty here speaks to God's all-encompassing power. There is nothing too difficult for Him, no enemy too great, and no situation too complex. When we abide in His shadow, we are essentially choosing to trust in His strength rather than our own. His shadow covers us, shielding us from harm, and provides the assurance that nothing can touch us without His permission. There is safety in His shadow, a profound peace that comes from knowing we are protected by the Creator of the universe. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. These are words of confidence and faith. The psalmist is not merely acknowledging God's protection as a theological concept, but declaring it personally. My refuge, my fortress, my God. This personalization of God's protective nature reminds us that God's care for us is deeply intimate and individual. He knows our struggles, our fears, and our needs. When we declare God as our refuge, we are acknowledging that we have a safe place to run to in times of danger. When we call Him our fortress, we are recognizing that He is a stronghold that cannot be breached. For He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. Here, God's protection extends to both the hidden and the overt dangers of life. The snare of the fowler symbolizes the subtle, deceptive traps that can ensnare us, whether it be temptations, schemes of the enemy, or unseen dangers. The deadly pestilence represents sudden calamities, whether they come in the form of disease, disaster, or any unforeseen event that brings harm. God's promise is to deliver us from both. He sees what we cannot see and protects us from what we don't even know is coming. His eyes are ever watchful, and His hand is ever ready to deliver us from danger. He will cover you with His pinions, and under His wings you will find refuge. This verse presents an image of God's tender care. Just as a mother bird shelters her chicks beneath her wings, so God draws us close to Himself, covering us with His protective embrace. His pinions are His feathers, and under His wings, we are safe from all harm. The imagery here is one of both strength and tenderness. God is mighty enough to protect us from every threat, yet gentle enough to offer us a place of warmth, peace, and comfort. Under His wings, we find refuge from the storms of life. No matter what comes against us, we are hidden in the safety of His love. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. This speaks to the reliability and constancy of God's protection. His faithfulness is not something that wavers or changes with circumstances. It is steadfast, unchanging, and sure. A shield offers protection from the attacks that come head-on, while a buckler is a smaller shield that provides close personal defense. God's faithfulness is both our overarching protection and our intimate defense. He is always there, always faithful, and always shielding us from harm. When life feels uncertain, it is His faithfulness that gives us the confidence to stand firm, knowing that He will never fail us. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day. Fear is one of the greatest weapons the enemy uses against us. But this verse assures us that when we trust in God, fear has no place in our hearts. The terror of the night represents the unknown, the things that lurk in the darkness, whether they be literal or metaphorical. The night often brings with it anxiety, uncertainty, and fear of the unseen. Yet God's presence in our lives dispels that fear. We can rest peacefully, knowing that He is watching over us, even in the darkest moments. The arrow that flies by day symbolizes visible, direct threats, whether they are physical dangers, personal attacks, or life's challenges. Yet even in the broad daylight, when we can see the danger approaching, God's protection remains. We are not to fear what is seen or unseen because God's hand covers us at all times. The reassurance here is clear. Whether it's the invisible dangers of the night or the visible threats of the day, God is with us, guarding us from harm. Nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. This verse further reinforces the idea that God's protection covers every possible danger, whether it's a hidden pestilence or a destructive force that comes in the brightness of day. Pestilence, which represents sickness or sudden calamity, can strike unexpectedly, but even then, we have the assurance that God is our protector. Destruction, which wastes at noonday, symbolizes the full force of danger that we can see clearly. Yet even then, God promises to shield us. His protection is not partial. It covers every aspect of our lives, day and night, seen and unseen. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. The magnitude of this promise is extraordinary. Even when chaos surrounds us, even when destruction seems to be all around, God's protection remains over His people. 1,000 may fall at our side, and 10,000 at our right hand, but the danger will not reach us. This speaks to God's supernatural ability to shield us from harm. His protection is not dependent on the circumstances around us. It is rooted in His sovereign will and love for us. No matter how overwhelming the situation may seem, God remains our refuge. You will only look with your eyes and see the recompense of the wicked. This verse shifts our focus to God's justice. The wicked may seem to prosper for a time, but God's justice will prevail. We will witness the consequences of evil, but we are not subject to the same fate. God is righteous and just, and He will ensure that the wicked receive their due recompense. As His children, we are called to trust in His justice, knowing that He will deal with evil in His time and in His way. Our focus should not be on the wicked, but on God's protective hand over our lives. Because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge, no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. Here, we see the promise of safety and security for those who choose to dwell in God's presence. When we make the Lord our dwelling place, when we live in the constant awareness of His presence, He promises to protect us from evil and harm. No plague can come near our homes, and no evil can touch us. This does not mean we will never face difficulties, but it does mean that God's protection is over us, and His presence surrounds our homes, our families, and every aspect of our lives. For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. This is one of the most comforting promises in the Psalm. God commands His angels to guard us. Angels who are sent to watch over us and protect us. We often forget that there is a heavenly host assigned to our care. These angels are not passive. They are active in guarding us in all our ways, ensuring that we are safe from harm. Whether we are aware of it or not, God's angels are constantly working on our behalf, intervening when necessary to keep us from danger. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. The angels' care is so meticulous that they protect us from even the smallest dangers. They bear us up in their hands, ensuring that we do not stumble or fall. This speaks to God's attention to detail in His care for us. He is concerned with every step we take, and He sends His angels to ensure that we are protected from even the smallest missteps. God's protection is not just for the big things, it's for the little things as well. Every part of our journey is covered by His watchful care. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. This is a promise of victory. The lion and the serpent represent powerful enemies, both seen and unseen. Yet God promises that we will tread on them, that we will have victory over every enemy that comes against us. This victory is not in our own strength, but in the power of God.